All right, I've got another question for you today that I'd love some feedback on if you can spare some time. Now, this is the World Class Happiness channel. I talk often about different areas of your life that you can improve on, and I quite often give advice. But I like these questions as well, because what happens is we get some interaction in the comments, and I can learn something, and we can all learn something from each other's comments. So I like these kind of videos that we make. Now, the last one that I made similar to this was about martial arts. I've been a lifelong martial artist, and I like to relate a lot of my topics to martial arts. So link the happiness martial art theme together quite often. Now, I'm going to link it this time to sport in general. So not just martial arts, sport in general. And the question is which sport do you think is the best for kids? All right, just kids in this case, in terms of their happiness and in terms of maybe their short-term and long-term happiness. And I'll explain why that's the case in a moment. Obviously, there's lots of different sports, loads and loads of different sports, and generally we'd probably agree that sports are really good for your mental health. They're fun. You can build relationships with sports, and you know. Martial arts is great for kids, and all sports in general are great for kids. Martial arts, especially, you know, people get their kids into martial arts because of the discipline aspect, and the you know, you can build work ethic, and you know, there's obviously the respect element. But people kind of get their kids into things like boxing and MMA and stuff like that because they want to get them off the streets, and they want to kind of channel their energy and stuff like that, and that's all good stuff. You know, and that's put people on a good path quite often, and that's you know, got people out of trouble, and that's been really good for people. The only trouble with that is if you're doing martial arts of that nature from quite a young age, there is obviously the issue long term of maybe some brain trauma. Okay, now I'm talking specifically at the moment about martial arts, but you know, you could say the same for things like American football is one that is kind of brought up quite often in terms of like head trauma, and even things like football, you know, like soccer. They're talking about people heading the ball and stuff nowadays, you know, and they're trying to get the that sort of thing banned, especially for kids. And you know, it's a case of whether those sports have some kind of long-term, I was going to say damage, but long-term effect on people in later life. All right. Now, the reason I'm bringing up all different types of sports is because, you know, there's all sorts of different sports, and I'd like your opinion on, you know, what you think would be the most beneficial sport overall for your happiness. Because if we were just saying which is the best sport, you know, again, we've got the same sort of situations as we had with the martial arts one about who would win a fight, as opposed to who would, which is the best martial art for your happiness. And this is a similar question. All right, so you might argue that, say, like gymnasts are the best athletes in the world, and I probably agree with that overall. However, there's probably quite good evidence to say that, you know, gymnastics is not really good for your body long term anyway. You know, they're obviously very agile and very flexible, but after a fairly short time, even fairly early on in life, they tend to get back problems and you know, knee problems and ankle issues and stuff like that. And you know, that's obviously not good for long term. But you could probably argue that again with things like tennis and badminton. You know, even though they're brilliant for your movement and your agility and your competitiveness and stuff like that, are they actually really very good for your ankles and your knees and stuff like that? And all sorts of parts of your body, really. Because I used to have a good friend from school who was a high-level tennis player, and he used to often show his right hand, which he used to play with, in comparison to his left hand. He used to put them together, and one was noticeably different in size to the other one. And I'm not saying that's going to cause him any issues later on in life, but there definitely is, when you do a sport, there definitely tends to be some kind of effect on you longer term. And You know, I've got one bicep bigger than the other, and if I take my top off and people stand behind me, they can see there's a slight curve in my back, which is possibly from doing more right-handed judo than left-handed judo. Even though I could fight both sides to a certain extent, there'll be one side that I favour, and there is a slight tilt in my back. So so will that have any effect when I'm slightly older? I don't know. But you know, you could say similar for things like wrestling and stuff like that, weightlifting, even things like rugby, and you know, there's all sorts of things that could have some kind of physical effect. But what you got to try and do is balance out that between the mental things and the mental pluses, if you like, that these sports could give you longer term as well. You know, what are going to be the best sports that are going to give you the best life lessons? Are certain sports better for your health in general? Like, you know, is it better to play an indoor sport or an outdoor sport? You know, are sports better to consider if there's likely to be a career off it? You know, like a financial reward and stuff like that. And maybe that's something to think about. Can sports be too competitive? You know, is that possibly something that could cause you problems later on? Being too competitive, is competitiveness good? Do you need a balance? You know, so there's lots of sports I haven't mentioned, and lots of sports that you would possibly think of and think, well, they're good for this reason or they're not good for that reason. And I just want your thoughts on it. What's the best sport? So the question is, what is the best sport for kids in terms of happiness, both short-term and long-term happiness, and why, basically? So leave your messages in the comments. I would be really interested to know your thoughts on that. And if you agree or disagree with any of the other comments, obviously reply to some of those comments so you can have a little bit of a debate in the comment section. If you like what we're talking about on the channel in general, please subscribe. Don't forget to do that. And I'll see you again on another video. Cheers, guys.